Okay, let's dive right into it. That AI rally, the one that seemed like it would never ever stop, well, it just hit a speed bump. So the big question on everyone's mind is this just a quick pit stop, or are we looking at the engine starting to seize up? We're going to break down exactly what went down. All right, so let's set the stage. The date is Thursday, October 9th, 2025. And you got to understand, the market has just been on an absolute rocket ship, right? Hitting new highs left and right. But today was different. The music kind of stopped, and you could feel investors looking around, wondering, hey, is the party over?
And when the closing bell rang, yeah, everything was in the red. The S&P 500 was down just a bit, about 0.25%. The Dow, well, it took the biggest hit, down over 0.5%. And the Nasdaq, which is packed with all those tech stocks, it barely moved, almost flat. It was a classic take the money and run kind of day, people just cashing in on those big gains.
So if you zoom out, what did the day really feel like? Honestly, it was this incredible tug of war. On one end of the rope, you had all these people saying, okay, I've made a ton of money, time to sell. But pulling just as hard on the other end was this army of buy the dippers, you know? They jumped in every time things looked a little weak. And that's what kept us from a much bigger drop. It tells you there's still a lot of belief in this market.
So why the sudden pause? What put the brakes on this rally? Well, it wasn't just one thing. Nope. It was more like 5 different things, all crashing into each other at the same time, creating this fog of uncertainty. So let's pull these pieces apart and see what was really moving the market today. I mean, talk about a perfect storm. First, you've got this huge debate raging, is AI a massive bubble or not? Then, boom, Q3 earnings season kicks off, so everyone's suddenly obsessed with profits. On top of that, China's squeezing the supply of critical minerals. Then you have news of a truce in the Middle East messing with oil prices. And to cap it all off, the US government is still shut down, so we're all flying blind. Yeah, a lot going on.
All right, let's start with that big AI debate. The bubble talk has been kind of a low hum in the background for a while, right? But today it became a blaring siren. And that's thanks to Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan. He came out and said, a correction might not be 10%, but more like 30%. You can bet when a guy like that says something so blunt, Wall Street listens.
But, for every bear, there's a bull, and the bulls came out swinging. Tom Lee over at Fundstrat basically said, hold on a second, this is not a bubble. And his big mic drop moment, he pointed out that NVIDIA, the king of AI, has a lower PE ratio than Costco. Yeah, the place you buy your bulk paper towels. His argument is that these prices are totally justified by earnings. And that right there, that's the fight in a nutshell.
Now let's talk about that government shutdown. We're on day 9 now, and it's created the situation that people are calling a data desert. Think about it. We're supposed to get all this crucial information, inflation reports, jobs numbers, and we're getting nothing. Silence. It's like trying to fly a plane in a thick fog with no instruments. Investors, and more importantly, the Fed, are just guessing. And then there's the whole global scene, which is just pulling the market in 2 different directions. You've got China deciding to tighten the screws on exports of really important stuff, like rare earth minerals. That's a huge deal for tech and EV supply chains. But at the exact same time, you hear whispers of a truce between Israel and Hamas, which makes everyone breathe a sigh of relief, and suddenly oil and gold prices start to drop. Talk about mixed signals.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But how did this all play out for specific stocks? Let's zoom in on some of the biggest winners and losers of the day, because their stories really tell you everything you need to know.
And get this, despite all that chatter about an AI bubble, what did the leader of the pack do? NVIDIA went up. It actually hit a brand new all-time high. And this wasn't just random hype. It was driven by real news. The US government gave the green light for a big chip export deal, and a major analyst raised their price target. It just goes to show, for a company like NVIDIA, the actual business results are still shouting louder than the bubble fears.
But wow, if you looked over at the luxury car market, it was a totally different world. Ferrari stock, it didn't just drop, it fell off a cliff, down more than 12%. Why? Because the company basically slammed the brakes on its own growth forecast. And a drop that big in a name like Ferrari, it really makes you wonder, are even the richest of the rich starting to get nervous about spending?
And this is such a perfect example of what people call the K-shaped economy. So while someone might think twice about dropping $500,000 on a Ferrari, they're clearly still willing to spend big on travel and experiences. Just look at Delta Airlines. The stock soared 8% today. They reported incredible earnings, and they said it was all thanks to high-end travelers buying up those premium seats.
So the money is still there. It's just being spent differently.
Meanwhile, the deal-making world is still buzzing. A company called Akero Therapeutics shot up more than 16%. Why? Because the drug maker giant Novo Nordisk announced they're buying them for over $5 billion. That's a huge vote of confidence and shows big money is still chasing innovation in healthcare.
And to bring it full circle, remember we talked about China and those mineral export controls? Well, here's the other side of that coin. MP Materials, a company that produces these minerals right here in the US, was up 4%. Investors are betting that if China's selling less, companies will have to buy from them. It's a perfect, clear-cut example of how geopolitics can instantly create winners right here at home.
Okay, so you've got bulls and bears screaming at each other. You've got people buying plane tickets but not sports cars. With all these mixed signals, how do you even think about what to do next? Let's walk through 3 different ways you could approach this market, from the most aggressive to the most cautious.
All right, scenario 1 is the high-risk, high-reward play. You basically bet that the bulls are right, the AI boom has legs, and you stick with the leaders like NVIDIA. Scenario 2 is the middle ground. You want to hedge your bets. Maybe you look at something like utilities, because they're stable, and hey, all these AI data centers need a ton of electricity, right? And then there's scenario 3, the defensive playbook. You take Jamie Dimon's warnings seriously, and you start shifting into classic safe havens like gold, getting ready for a potential storm. So let's wrap this all up. When you look at everything that happened today, it really boils down to one simple thing: a massive tug-of-war between optimism and caution.
You can really tell 2 completely different stories about today. The most positive story is that this was just a healthy breather. The AI revolution is real, NVIDIA's earnings prove it, and people are still spending money. Just look at Delta. But the most negative story is that this was a big, flashing warning sign. We're flying blind without economic data. And that 30% correction warning from Jamie Dimon, well, it highlights some very real cracks in the foundation. So looking ahead, what are the 2 biggest things to keep on your radar? First is this idea of an AI domino effect. All these AI companies are so interconnected. They buy from each other, they invest in each other. If one of the big ones stumbles, it could pull the others down with it. The second big risk is the shutdown shock. Sooner or later, the government's going to reopen. And when it does, we're going to get hit with a flood of all that delayed data at once. Jobs, inflation, everything. And that could make the market go absolutely wild. And that brings us to the ultimate question of the day. The AI engine that's been driving this whole rally, it's definitely cooling off a little. So, is it just pulling into the pit stop to refuel before the next leg of the race? Or is that smoke coming from under the hood a sign that it's about to break down completely?